So I like watching a lot of these videos on YouTube where people talk about tropes because I find talking about tropes really fun, but I haven't seen a lot of authors talk about their favorite tropes, so I thought that it would be kind of fun today for me to talk about my 10 favorite YA tropes of all time, and it might be kind of funny for people who have read or will read my books because I write a lot of these tropes into my books. So this will kind of take you behind the scenes of my writing process and the kinds of tropes and things you can expect out of my books. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about why I think these tropes are so fun to write. I'm also going to make a video on my 10 least favorite YA tropes, so you can come after me for my least favorite YA tropes because I really, really hate some tropes that a lot of people love, and that's going to be interesting to get into. But this is a positive video, and this video is going to be full of love. So before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. My name is Claire Fraze, and I'm an award-winning young adult author who makes videos sharing the actionable writing tips that helped me make my writing better, as well as apparently an occasional trope video and fun video about books. No disclaimers on this video because I stand by my opinions. My first favorite YA trope of all time is friends to lovers. So I write young adult thrillers and mysteries and light horror books. I'm not a romance author, so I don't write friends to lover books, but I do love writing friends to lovers subplots. I don't know why I love these romance plots so much. I think it's because of the familiarity that the two characters have with each other, and I think it's just so cute every single time to see these characters go from being best friends with each other to something more and have their already deep connection with each other be expanded on in some way. I also love this trope because it's so fun to write. You always have that like point of no return, and there's always that little dance that they do at the beginning where they've like been friends for so long and they have such a deep important relationship with each other and they don't want to ruin it, so they're both too scared to say anything. And there's always that threshold where like if someone says something, then things are never going to be the same and they might ruin their friendship. So they're always like tiptoeing up to that point, and then usually something happens and then it becomes extremely messy, and I think that that's super fun to write. I don't know if any of you have watched Love, Rosie or read the book, but that's probably my favorite example of this trope. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but they spend a lot of time in the whole like dancing around it, and there's like a lot of miscommunication, and there's some really like tragic events that make it a lot harder for them, and the entire time you're just screaming at them being like, you're in love with each other. Like, it's so frustrating, and that is the kind of feeling that I like instilling not only within readers but also in myself. I wrote a book kind of inspired by that whole connection and relationship in Love, Rosie, not like the whole thing, but that subplot of the book was inspired by that. And it was like two 16-year-old best friends who'd been best friends since they were kids. And let me just say that it got so messy so quickly, and like twins were involved, and like other people they dated were involved, and it's so good. It's so good. If you think so too, let me know in the comments. My second favorite YA trope of all time is found family. I hear this a lot with a lot of people. I think this is a pretty common favorite trope. I think found family is awesome. Found family is basically what it sounds like. It's like a bunch of people who aren't actually related coming together and kind of creating a sort of family together that they like find together. It's like they're all really different, but they come together and create this family unit based on these like shared experiences they've had with each other. Some cool examples of found family are like the Mysterious Benedict Society or Six of Crows. I personally am of the opinion that found family is one of the most elite young adult tropes out there, and I think that the main reason behind this is because of the redemption possible in found family. Like, a lot of the people in these found families have kind of tragic backstories and really hard hardships that they've gone through, and some of them might not have biological families or at least good relationships with their biological families. So it's about the redemption that comes from them being able to create their own family with these other people that are similar to them, and that they can still have these meaningful relationships even though they've already been through so much and might not have a biological family that has given them all of these positive experiences. There's a lot of hope embedded in this trope, and I think that that's part of the reason that people root for them so much, is because even despite all of the tragedy, they're still able to have a happy ending, and they're still able to find other people to kind of make a family with. I also just love how found families can come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes, and also all different sorts of contexts. There's also a ton of drama in found family. Like, because people are operating as a sort of family unit, you can get all of the family drama in this like unit of people that are not necessarily a biological family. These characters are learning how to trust each other. They're maybe learning how to treat each other like brothers and sisters. They have these kind of family dynamics within their group and they work that out over the course of the story. You can also mix in a ton of other tropes with them. You can have some characters that like rise up to being the sort of like begrudging parental figure of other more immature characters their own age, or you can have like more like friends to lovers or enemies to lovers that become like the quote-unquote like parental figures about these other people and their found families. You can also do these kind of like best friends to lovers and these found family dynamics. It's so good. The whole thing is so good, and it's so fun to write when you're writing about trauma, especially because you can give your characters these second chances and you can show through these found families, you can teach your characters how to trust others. So chef's kiss, it's elite. Okay, third favorite trope, and I feel like this is also kind of a popular one, but I also feel like a little silly for saying this. Bad boy is a total softie. I'm such a sucker for like the bad boy character that does the right thing in the end, or the bad boy character who thinks everything sucks except for that one person, or the bad boy character just like falling in love with a literal ray of sunshine. Those like redemption arcs and those like witty, sarcastic, I don't care about anything characters who learn how to care about stuff over the course of the book and who show up for the people sometimes in their found family, sometimes the people that they've fallen in love with, and they show up and do the right thing when there's nothing in it for them. It gets me every time. My favorite example of this is like Will Herondale from the Infernal Devices. You know, I like how he's kind of like snarky and sarcastic and he's like, I don't care for anybody, and then he really secretly just like desperately cares for Tessa, and throughout the entire thing he just absolutely cares for Jem, and like even though he doesn't like anybody else, he loves Jem, and he just, it's so good. That's a character that I really love to write, because especially if you get to write from their point of view in the first person, because you get to see in their head and then you also get to see them from the outside perspective, so you can see them being snarky and sarcastic and kind of like, you know, not seeming like a softie, and then you can get inside their head and show that they're really, really sensitive or a softie. It's so cute. We love this difference in quality. I just am editing this video right now and realized that I just didn't film my fourth favorite trope on my list, so we are going to film it right now. My fourth favorite trope is animal sidekicks. I'm obsessed with animal sidekicks. I recognize this also isn't necessarily just a YA trope, but I love animal sidekicks. And like animal sidekicks with a lot of personality. Like I like those animals that are like almost human, that kind of act in human-like ways, that can like support the protagonist or lead them towards drawing different conclusions. I'm also a huge sucker for like being matched with an animal that like matches you in some ways as a person. Like in the Golden Compass, when I think, if I'm remembering correctly, like they had animals that kind of matched them in some way that are like their animal companions, and there was like some sort of like spiritual connection between the two. I think it's amazing. I love characters who are animals. This hasn't been something I've been able to do in any of my stories, but I definitely want to do this in the future. My fifth favorite YA trope of all time has to be complicated love triangles. I'm not talking about your like standard love triangle, like the classic Twilight love triangle, like Will, Bella choose Edward or Jacob. Unrelated, but I recently watched all of the Twilight movies for the very first time and was absolutely shocked by how terrible they were. Like I really, really couldn't believe that these books were ever super popular. I also like got really angry while I was watching them because of just how harmful the depiction of womanhood is in that book, and like just it makes me so angry how like Bella had no agency and she had no ability to protect herself, and she couldn't even make the simple choice of who she wanted to be with, and she just, everything was done to her. She didn't have any control or agency in her situation. She didn't rise up and do anything. I thought that that was such a harmful way to portray like falling in love and dating for young women. It makes me really mad, but I digress. Complicated love triangles are my favorite. Like the one in The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare, how, I don't know if this is really a spoiler or not. Don't watch this part of the video and skip ahead to the timestamp that I put right here if you don't want to hear this part. Like how in The Infernal Devices, Will is madly in love with Tessa, and Jem is madly in love with Tessa, and Tessa is in love with both of them, and then Will and Jem are like really, really close and love each other. It doesn't make it like an obvious, clear choice. Like the readers love Jem and they love Will for different reasons, and they're such different people, and they're both such good people, and Tessa's a good person, so it just makes everything so complicated, and it makes you so invested as a reader. Like it's not a standard love triangle. Like I typically don't like the standard love triangles, but when you're able to take a love triangle and complicate it in some way and flip flip it on its head and make you not really sure where it's going to lead, instead of just make you really frustrated that the character can't pick someone already. In one of my books, which is currently unreleased but will be released within the next year or so, I have a very complicated love triangle where my main character is in love with her best friend, and her best friend is also in love with her, but also starts dating her twin sister, and it becomes really horrible and messy, and there is no way to resolve the love triangle without someone getting hurt somehow. That stuff is my jam. I'm so all over those complicated love triangles. My sixth favorite YA trope, and this is something that I often include in a lot of, especially my supernatural books, is the whole idea that only the teens can solve this and the adults are completely useless. The example I'm going to give of this trope is the Fear Street movies, because I just watched those and they're really fresh on my brain. There's this whole idea in those movies that the town is haunted by the curse of this witch, and the teens believe it, and then they go to the adults for help, and the adults are unable to help them, and they don't believe that the curse is actually real, so the teens have to step up and save the town by themselves. I'm such a sucker for this trope. I know a lot of people I think are annoyed by this trope, but I don't know, I think something about how, like, especially when you're writing YA, having, like, the teen characters be the ones who are empowered and responsible for this giant thing that they need to do, I think there's something really appealing about that. As a teenager, I loved reading about that. Like, now, you know, as a person in their 20s, I'd be a little bit more interested also in reading about stories of, like, older people who are, like, put in situations like that too, and put in situations where they should save the town or save the people. But as a teenager, I didn't want to read about that. I just wanted to read about the 16-year-olds who had to do it and somehow find a way to pull it off. So useless adults. I think I'd be pretty useless if I were put in a position like where I had to save a town from a creepy supernatural monster. I don't know, something tells me I'd be one of the first people to go. My seventh favorite trope, not only in YA, but pretty much of all time, are magical portals. Like going into the closet to get to Narnia, or falling down the rabbit hole to get to Wonderland. Like those kind of crazy portals that seem really simple, you open it up and then you're in a completely different world. It's super addictive. Or like in Coraline, how she like opens the door and she crawls through and then she gets into the other like side. It's so cool. I'm so obsessed with Narnia. Those used to be my favorite books as a kid, and it's always been my dream to write something kind of similar to that, but I haven't gotten around to doing it, and I don't know when I'm going to do it, but it will happen at some point in my life. It's gonna happen. I just love the idea of like designing a cool alternate world from scratch like Narnia, and having, again, this also kind of ties into the last trope I was talking about the adults being useless, but like allowing the kids to be the only ones to access this cool alternate world, and therefore they're the ones shouldering the responsibility of the conflict that they find there. 10 out of 10 would recommend. 8, and this also might not be for everybody, but I am obsessed with time travel. Traveling back in time into the past, traveling forward in time into the future, getting to build kind of a time traveling mechanical system has always been something that I wanted to do. Like figuring out the rules of time travel, like how does it work, like are you stuck in a time loop? I think that it's such a weird world building challenge because it's really hard to pull off time travel that is even a little bit believable. But one of my favorite movies of all time is a movie called About Time, and it is about this boy who is able to travel through time, and it's like something that all the men in his family can do, and he has to like use his ability to travel through time to like make things happen in his life, and it's the sweetest, most romantic movie ever, and I'm obsessed with it. And using time travel as a narrative tool like that, I've always wanted to do because I thought it was really cool. I don't meet a lot of people who have also seen this movie, so if you've seen this movie and you also like this movie, please comment below because I'd love to talk about it. Alright, the 9th thing that I'm totally a sucker for in YA is the dark and tragic past. I don't know why, but I love writing about trauma. I always have to put content warnings on my books because I always try to dive into pretty heavy topics with my characters, but I don't know, something about the characters with the dark and tragic pasts who are still showing up to do the right thing, to learn, to grow, and also, especially in YA, showing dark and tragic pasts with hope also embedded in them. Like, things are really hard and you've had to go through a lot of trauma, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's something so powerful about that to me. I'm also especially a sucker for like the love interests with the dark and tragic past who have to learn how to like trust people and love and overcome that kind of stuff with somebody else. I think it's just, I don't know, it's so romantic and it's so fun to write. As I said, it's the whole like trauma and hope thing for me, and like writing them is like one thing. And finally, and this is honestly probably my favorite trope that I really look for when I'm reading YA, are like quietly strong female characters. Also female friendship, like great, authentic, awesome, badass female friendship. Well, yes, I completely agree that there's something really awesome about those characters who are just like sword wielding, bad guy slaying, like total like baller female characters who can like kill things and are really talented at fighting. I think that there's something really, really cool about writing characters who are quietly strong, who are really, really tough, but also have a lot of feelings, who are really in touch with emotions, who care a lot about people, who are really sensitive, because you can be really, really, really strong while also being really sensitive. Female characters who like pretty things or traditionally girly things, but are also really tough, really brave, and able to stand up to the antagonists when they need to. Because writing a strong female character doesn't mean you need to write a female character in a traditionally masculine role. You can like traditionally feminine things and carry yourself in a traditionally feminine way and still be extremely strong and capable. And that's something that I love seeing in young adult fiction. So those are my favorite 10 tropes. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope this was at least a little entertaining. This was really fun to film and talk about. If you share any of these favorite tropes, please let me know down in the comments. I love talking about them. If you disagree with me, please let me know why and drop me a comment below. Comment with your favorite YA tropes. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like it and to subscribe to my channel. I hope you have a good week, everyone, and as always, happy writing.